Namaskar, welcome to Sansad TV. You are watching our special program on space, breakthroughs and advanced tech for India. This is your host Manish Kumar. Indian space exploration is certainly moving now in a new era with such complex missions like Gagagyan and further exploration into the unknown as far as the sun through the Aditya L1 spacecraft. However, recent breakthroughs in small satellite bring the spotlight on space tech for civil and military as well. In fact, this is also about Indian private space entities working for futuristic space tech for the military and commercial arena. On such an important issue of national importance, we have Dr. S. Somanath, a distinguished scientist, Secretary, Department of Space and Chairman, Space Commission ISRO. He has led some of the key national initiatives on space, driving national space policy, facilitated in-space activation which for the commercial arm and engagement of ISRO with startup in this space sector. Most notably, he is pushing boundaries for Indian space startups for commercial activities including launch vehicle production among other initiatives. I welcome Dr. Somanath.
Thank
and
you.
I begin asking you, of course, we will come back on this small satellite revolution, but please tell us, give us an overview about what is space policies and how you look at Space Vision 2047 and an overall idea about your vision of the space in India at the time.
There was an announcement by the government in 2020 about the space sector reforms, which looks at the entire space ecosystem in this country, the national space actors like the ISRO, and then we wanted to bring in more and more of private investment in space, bring more and more non-governmental entities into space sector and facilitate them through the investment which are already done in space sector through our governmental investment, and also to offer a level playing field for all those who want to work in space sector irrespective of whatever may be the area. So this idea of the reform has been converted into a policy by 2023, and the space policy came out where the roles of different entities have been well defined. ISRO, with its national space capability and research capability, will continue to work on advanced technology and research, and all that they have developed over the years, which is into production, which is into operation, will move over to an operational regime and commercialization, and technology which ISRO developed will move over to private entrepreneurs who want to use it for developing this ecosystem, and all those facilities that has been created in ISRO will be also made available to those who want to develop technologies or new systems in India. Also created an entity called InSpace, where the new actors, because private actors when they are coming in, the space is a regulated area because of international commitments, needs authorization. So this authorization aspect will also be handled by InSpace, especially with regard to launch vehicles, building, satellite launching, and management of the orbital resources, which are very controlled resource. Then we also empowered NSIL, the New Space India Limited, to handle the commercial operations, especially operating the satellites which we own. National assets will now be operated by NSIL for commercial space. They will also aggregate the demand from different users and build systems, could be satellites, could be launch vehicles, could be applications, and deploy them on a commercial basis. Then with this we also handhold all the new startups and companies who are coming up in this NGE, help them to onboard the various activities, help them to promote this, connect all the industries who are created as an ecosystem or supply chain, upgrade them to become builder of integrated systems over a long period of time. So this is the essence of Space Policy 2023, and through this process what we want to achieve is the growth of our space economy from the present level to a higher level, which will be defined as part of the space assessment which the InSpace is doing.
And you well defined in terms of your processes and what futuristic plan roadmap for under this mission. But I also would like to know in some of the futuristic technology which puts ISRO ahead of the world. Possibly in 2047 we will be the first on such technology breaking space boundaries. If you talk about some of the technology which ISRO is trying to put through under this mission, beginning with the Gagagyan, which all we are aware of, and you especially talked about the quantum communication on such breakthroughs. If you could talk some of those things under the mission 2047.
See, what we did in the past has been basically to bridge the gap that existed between us and the other developed nations in space. We have so far achieved that type of bridging the gap and reach somewhere closer to their skills, capabilities, which is very clearly demonstrated by our ability to go to Mars for the very first launch successfully, ability to land on the moon, then our effort to build the human space flight capability. But that is just not enough. We need to go much far in terms of technological capability. You mentioned about quantum. It's one of them in terms of secured communication protocols, secured communication capabilities. But what is more important is to have our enhancement of the infrastructure that is available in space. For example, we have 52 satellites in space right now. But as a nation which is requiring services in various fronts, including the communication, observation, navigation, science, our number of satellites have to increase in multifold. Our launch cost has to come down over a period of time so that it becomes more profitable and economical to launch more satellites. Our services in this country has to reach large segment of the society than what is serving at present, because ours is a huge country which still have untapped potentials in terms of applications. Right. So all these are mandates us to scale up the operation. The scaling up will happen through many activities. One, of course, is the technology development. You mentioned about it. We have many technologies currently under development. I must tell you that in ISRO, we have almost 2,000 different technology development programs currently going on, which includes Gagagyan related technologies, which is human-centric technologies, building our ability to go and land on moon with the human beings at some point in time, which requires new launch vehicle development, green propulsion development, related materials and technologies development, higher levels of integrated electronic system development, new materials development, new propulsion technologies including electric propulsion and others. So the list is a huge list, which some of them are enabling technologies, some of them are products that will come out of it.
Dr. Somanath, I would also like to bring your attention to some particular aspect of development, space development, which is perhaps seen as a game changer. ISRO is known for launching big complex satellite, doing multiple works, but there's also area of a small satellite, perhaps it is seen as a new revolution, especially in India, and also the private sector coming into this space. Recently, IDEX has supported and initiated a private sector entity, and this is about multi-sensor satellite, which open further ground for critical hyperspectral imaging in inner space. What are the possibilities that you are see unfolding on small satellites? How big this phenomena is in India? Is it the next phase of Indian space?
See, this small satellite is something happening today. It started from the West some time back. Earlier we used to make satellites which were a few tons in mass, especially in the Rombino communication systems, and they will continue to be of that nature. But when you look at Earth observation, there is a revolution happening in terms of bringing down the size of the satellite substantially lower, especially because of the large constellation concept that has come, and ability to miniaturize because of electronics miniaturization, and using commercial off-the-shelf components than high-grade electronic components. So it allows you to build at very fast turnaround of satellites with high advanced electronics than the traditional electronics which has a high heritage. So it allows you to miniaturize it, and also software which is much more powerful than in the past, which allows you to do the pre-processing better than the earlier times. So the entire process integrates into small footprint, makes small satellites. And you mentioned about multi-sensor. For example, the optical, which is like a normal human eye seeing the visible spectrum or near infrared or ultraviolet, we can go further into the spectra and then see in greater detail of objects and classifying objects based on the spectral characteristic. This is precisely the hyperspectral imaging.
Right.
We also have radar imaging, which allows you to see through area when there is no illumination. So when you merge the optical and radar, you come multi-sensor fusion capability, which you see day and night imaging capability, ability to see through materials, see through covers or camouflage, etc., enables you to identify objects much better. So this new technologies, and that you put in small footprint, is impressive. In fact, I must tell you that Indian startups and companies are actually creating innovation in this direction, building them into small footprints.
So Dr. Somanath, is a big opportunity for the Indian defense startup, the brilliant startup from our institution, to come up and launch multiple satellites and have a possible applications. What are the areas which they can sustain and grow and do further research, especially in
lot of areas.
And if you give some direction in this area, because a lot of startup which I speak to try to understand, what exactly they can come in space, in this particular small satellite, and what they can do in terms of applications, civilian size as well as possible defense applications which they can explore further.
A lot of areas, I must tell you. Essentially the small satellite allows us to now put large number of satellites. So when you have large number of satellites in multiple orbit, you get a revisit which is much faster. For example, satellites move very fast, and over the surface of Earth they allow visibility over few minutes of time. But then once that is over, next satellite should come and take on its place, so that we have a continued visibility, something called persistent visibility. How fast you can see the event again is a question called revisit. If it is 1 hour, it is very good. If it is 10 minutes, it is much better. But this is possible only with large number of satellites. So small satellite allows you to build such large constellations. This is one advantage of large number of satellites and constellations. Second advantage is that we have new technologies which allows you to do onboard processing. The images collected need not be downloaded immediately. It can be processed on board using edge computing and artificial intelligence, and send only those essential features alone to be ground, so that you can communicate with lesser power and faster communication. And another advantage which is coming is inter-satellite communication, which is a new technology which is coming up, that they will communicate either through an optical or RF means, and this will enable them to task one action. Suppose one satellite detects something, right, the following satellite can do the continued activity of looking at that spot and create more data. So when you have large number of satellites with that type of inter-satellite communication, edge computing capability, decision making possibilities, etc., enables you to do real-time imaging and give very strategic information to folks.
Also contribute to the telecommunication in the big way to reaching last mile connectivity using multiple small satellite,
which is happening elsewhere. It has not happened in India. For example, the constellation like the Starlink or the OneWeb is an example of low Earth orbit or medium Earth orbit constellations, which will provide continuous high throughput communication capability like internet communication, etc., not from geo. So it is again another concept which you can see, that a handheld device will be in a position to directly receive satellite communication through satellite communication with low latency. For example, when you have a geo satellite, there is a communication is not that instantaneous. It has some delay, time delay coming. It's called high latency communication. When you have a low Earth orbit, you get a very near real time or a high very low latency services. So this is also another area for constellation based, but then you should understand that such constellations are not region specific, they are global in nature.
And how these private players can launch, because I understand and world knows that you have been launching the complex and large satellite,
yes,
which can go up to as far as the sun and to the Mars, but do we have enough launching stations, and what we need to boost infrastructure to have such constellation of satellite and to have that scale of advantage to our industry and to various sectors in economy?
Currently we have launch capabilities adequate in India in terms of big satellites. For example, we have PSLV which can launch 1 ton plus satellites. We have LVM3 which can launch 4 ton class of satellites. We have SSLV which can launch up to half a ton or lesser than satellites. So launchers are there, and their production has to be enhanced. So we are not actually not in short of launchers, but what we are actually in short is that cost effective launching to support small satellite industry. So that is what is happening currently in space sector. The new private companies who are coming up like the Skyroot, the Agnikul, are examples of small launcher development which will feed into small satellite launching market at affordable cost, which is a welcome step.
I again want to focus on the futuristic technology and some of the international collaborations of ISRO around the world, which brings new depth and ideas and futuristic technology to our domain. I'm talking about ISRO's collaboration on futuristic tech. For example, the Space Situational Awareness Data Sharing Pact with the United States in 2022, which enables Space Department to collaborate with Combined Space Operations Center to protect the space-based asset. This is about safeguarding your critical space asset. Where we are in terms of those milestones in safeguarding our space assets, and are these a new area which ISRO is working on? Could you talk about such areas?
Absolutely. I think what you mentioned about is safety and security of the space assets is paramount today. As a nation, a spacefaring nation having huge assets up there, we must pay attention to its security. in the scenarios of where which you don't want to happen, we must be able to watch what is happening to our satellites, especially with regard to its safety, its interventions that someone else may do in terms of observing it or incapacitating it, must be aware of. So, for this we need to have continuous observation of the satellites, not just the signals, but physical observations through telescopes and radars. So, we also develop capability to predict what is happening by patterns of movements and things like that around our satellites, so as to safeguard them. So, this is also requiring that not only we observe our own satellites, we should also observe other objects around it, which goes into thousands of them. So, and also create mathematical and modeling capability in this regime, so as to predict. So, it does not come from observation alone. Observation data is one part, but using this data to make what will happen,
predictive technology,
and
AI, sort of
AI, computational capability, etc., modeling capability, all this currently we have. I think this strength we want to make use of. What we do not have today is observational capability. We do not have ground stations, optical stations, radars to observe all of them. We are trying to build them over a period of time and create those capabilities.
I also want to focus on some of the complex areas which of course ISRO has pioneered, while we are still talking about, say for example, jet engine, the propulsion system for our fighter jet. Here ISRO has pioneered. We understand the revolution, the cryogenic engine we have been able to do in India itself, and which propels our big rockets to unknown areas. As far as that, we also you have been working on air breathing propulsion project with reusable capability, which is a key futuristic tech breakthrough unfolding and also around the world. Could you talk about it? What it entails and how futuristic this technology is for India, and how far we have succeeded in testing?
Rocket propulsion technologies were closely guarded. We have been well benefited by our collaboration with the others in the past, with the French for understanding the earth-storable engine technology, with the Russians for the cryogenic technology. We got benefited by the association, but all of them we developed our own. We are developing newer engines now on our own. They are very powerful engines that we have right now. And in terms of solid propulsion, we have mastered it much earlier, and we have the biggest of the world, the largest few of the solid motors ever made in the world, are some owned by us. In the future, we want to do many more things. We are working on greener propulsion called LOX methane of 100-ton class. We are working on air breathing propulsion to help us to build reusable rockets. We are building on rocket engines which will work on interplanetary missions. We are working on electric propulsion. We are working on nuclear assisted propulsion. So many of these technologies we will develop in this to remain on the top notch of those capabilities.
One of the development I understand is also semi-cryogenic propulsion system.
Yes.
What will it unfold? How futuristic this technology is?
Semi-cryogenic is not a futuristic technology. Semi-cryogenic is more of a traditional capability which existed in 1960s onwards. It's nothing new, but we were not knowing it. And
trying to Indianize this.
It is basically to understand and do it ourselves, because semi-cryogenic offers reusability. It also offers a high mass to thrust capability. We call it density impulse compared to earth-storable, and it is better than cryogenics as far as boosters are concerned. Because of that, we would like to go with the semi-cryogenic technology.
Dr. Somanath, of course, I also understand your focus has been expanding the horizon of ISRO to the industry larger, including the private industry, which we have focused also initially. What are the key focus area that ecosystem needs for higher stage of indigenization in the underlying supply chain of Indian space sector? What they required basically?
A lot of things are required. For example, how much we are dependent on others, we must be fully able to understand first. If you look at rockets, we were only 30% indigenous when we started the program. Today we are 95% indigenous in terms of materials, propellants, and all sort of things that goes into rocket building. Only 5% of the items, which includes electronic chips and processors, we buy. But when you come to talk about spacecraft, 50% of it is still imported, because spacecrafts are essentially electronics intensive. Because of that, most of the electronics and systems that goes into it are purchased from outside in parts. But we are able to use the parts and develop the whole of the systems itself. But this parts making is slightly different than the commercial electronics. The commercial electronics indigenization program has now started, especially the chips making, etc. But making it for space requires another approach. So one of them is like building detectors of various class. You mentioned about hyperspectral,
right,
thermal, and many other pan detectors, scientific detectors, memory devices which are high reliability rated, microcontrollers. So and RF equipments and devices. This requirement has to be indigenized over a period of time. So we are working on it. While the commercial electronics industry grow, this also should grow, especially micro fabs, mini fabs of various nature are to be built in the country with small investments in academic institutions and societies, because it doesn't have high turnaround, high throughput, and profitability is lower. Especially this also it will become a challenging issue for even startups who are building small satellites.
Right.
All their equipments and components are even purchased from outside. So we need to create an ecosystem for that also.
So government also wishes to do that, and you as ISRO chairman also has a vision to do that. But what is required in terms of R&D, if you have to broaden the scope of such R&D beyond ISRO and to the private sector? What is required? Is it a policy thrust required? Is it a PLI scheme which need required for a young startup to take plunge into this, to have a R&D set up? Because it's a high investment area and a long gestation period, which you also mentioned earlier.
Fundamentally, this issue is because of the high investment. Not very high, I won't say. It is a moderately high investment, but the issue is the long gestation period. The investment get locked for a long time until you develop something and goes to market and begin to profit. It takes a long gestation period. So the cost of capital becomes very high, and the profitability is again a function of the success which you are likely to achieve, possible or not possible. So there is a high amount of risk. So this risk taking capability is what we need. For them, we need to have support system in the government, and markets are still not available. So we identified these issues. One is creating new markets for them and creating a sustainable supply chain for them, so that they are assured of some comfort at this moment before they start investing. It is essential. And
of course, towards the end of, we must focus on some of the critical missions in the whole world is watching. Under your leadership is India's national mission Gagagyan is expected to source nearly even 60%. You talked about this equipment from the Indian private sector. What are the breakthroughs, advancement here? And if you could further highlight the ongoing preparation for the Gagagyan, what about the Indian Space Station also, which you're trying to...
A lot of things are coming out. So
first on Gagagyan and then...
Yeah, Gagagyan, of course, we have now going through the first unmanned mission capability. In fact, the rocket is fully ready. The crew module where the people will travel is getting integrated now. So we are hoping to have the launch this year before December, and this will be the first setting the stage for a full-fledged end-to-end demonstration. After that, we have to repeat it with the higher levels of integration of systems. In the first mission, we will be sending only a robot, half a humanoid, but we will have to propagate that activity to much higher levels of integration, leading to the human space flight.
Could you give us a time frame?
Of course, I won't give a time frame at this moment. It all depends on the successes that we have put. We have put a timeline for our missions, but when the human being will go is a function of how successful we are in all those missions. Then we are also working on space station. The space station is an announcement that was done a few months back.
Right.
We are now converted that announcement into engineering detail of how the space station should look like, what are the elements of the space station, what type of technologies that we need to develop, and what type of launches that we need to accomplish. This also has been fully outlined now, and we are in going to government for seeking their approval.
And last but not the least, on your words on the Chandrayaan series, which we have seen very success story.
Yeah.
What is new which unfolding?
See, Chandrayaan was successful in terms of landing, but now it has to come back to Earth. Now we are looking at how it can come back to Earth. So that is called the next series of Chandrayaan will be the one which will go land, collect something, scientific outcome, and then come back, and retrieval of that specimen is important. This is a precursor to actual human being over there and coming back. So if you are able to bring it for 1 kilogram of rock, then you can do it for one human being. So basically the methods of doing it will be evaluated and demonstrated through a series of Chandrayaan missions, leading to the human going there, doing experiment and coming back at a later point. So we are working on that also.
So a lot of breakthrough in space technology, which put India again on the global map. It's also about the civilian usage of space as well as the defense breakthroughs, including the broadening of space beyond ISRO to our brilliant young startup. Here, I thank Dr. Somanath, a distinguished scientist, Secretary Department of Space, and Space Commission ISRO. Thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
so
coming
much.
on Sansad TV. This is Manish Kumar signing off. Thank you.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.